Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another dazzling episode of the Single Parents Podcast. This is the podcast for anybody whose life may have turned out a little less than traditional. It's your boy Anthony here again, who's actually recording this episode on his birthday. What's up? Yes, that's right. I'm the birthday boy. What's good? Yes, thank you. Thank you. I feel the love coming through the technology from you all. I really do appreciate it. And we'll talk more in a little bit towards the end of the episode, exactly where I'm at in regards to the fact that it is indeed my birthday. But in the meantime, I do appreciate you all being here, helping me celebrate this special day. If you'd like to get me a present, you could do so because, again, it's my birthday, so I feel I have the right to make these type of demands. Not demands, request. You don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. But if you do want to help me celebrate, there is a few things I'd like to ask. The first thing is that you just make sure you hit subscribe on the podcast, turn on automatic downloads. That way you never miss an episode in the future. Maybe an episode will come out on your birthday and we can pass along the love to you. But we won't know that unless you stay connected to the show by subscribing. So make sure you do that. Also, don't forget, you could share the podcast. That would be a great birthday present. Share the podcast with a friend, with a family member, with another birthday boy or birthday girl out there. I mean, people love podcasts, right? Like, there's nothing, I can't think of a better birthday present than to gift somebody with the fact that you found a legit podcast and you want them to check it out as well. I think that's the best birthday present possible. Better than cash, better than a new car, better than diamonds, better than a fancy restaurant. No, share the podcast with the birthday boy, with the birthday girl, and they'll be talking about it for years to come. I guarantee it. And then last but not least, if you feel so inclined to do so, only do this if you really think it's worthy of it. Forget the fact that it's my birthday or not. Do this if you think it's worthy. You could rate the podcast. Rate the podcast 5 stars, the highest possible rating on whatever podcast hosting platform you're listening to it on. So it tells the algorithms out there that this show is legit and it passes it along to more people.
Something to relate to.
So I was thinking about this week, and maybe this is just something I wrestle with, but and I actually, maybe it's more of something I just need to keep in mind. I don't know if wrestle with is the right terminology. Maybe. I mean, you can help me decide after you kind of hear my breakdown of what I'm thinking. Let's see. Last week I had my girls, had my kids, and usually throughout the week we're busy with work and school and homework and chores and this or that. But come the weekend, obviously, that's our time to shine, right? That's our time to go and do something fun. That's our time to get out of the house. That's our time to just really spend a whole day uninterrupted, just doing essentially what we want to do. So that Saturday in particular, because Sunday comes around and you're getting ready for the next week, and then they're getting ready to go back to their mom's house. And usually we're just kind of laying low, playing some games, whatever. But that Saturday is like, okay, what are we going to do this Saturday? We gotta think of something fun, think of something legit to do. Again, that's at least our mindset. So last week we were just kind of gearing up for that, right? Like we were going through our days throughout the week and we were thinking about, hey, Saturday's coming up. What should we do? We had made plans to go skating at the roller rink on Friday, but like, okay, what's Saturday's adventure going to be? And them being 7 and 8-year-old kids, they came up with the bright idea of doing a shopping spree on Saturday. They're like, ooh, Dad, can you just basically take us out on a shopping spree, take us out on the town, spoil us a little bit? Let's go here, let's go there. Let's just get hella materialistic for an afternoon and go crazy. I mean, they didn't say those exact words, but they were just that was essentially the plan. They wanted me to take them out shopping. And I thought about it and I was like, that's not really a good afternoon. Like, that's kind of selfish. That's kind of this, that's kind of that. But the more I did think about it, like, so here's the big thing. Here's kind of where I was coming from. So again, 7 and 8-year-old kids For them, a shopping spree is like what? Maybe like 30. I could give them $30 each. I can hand them the cash and I can say, okay, here's your shopping spree. Here's $30. Go out, go do what you wanted to get. Go, we can go here, we can go there. You can get little stuff, and to them, $30 is like, oh my gosh, I just hit the jackpot. Like I'm rich. I could do so much with $30. So that's kind of where I was coming from. I was like, I can give them each $30, and if that's gonna make their day, that's what they're gonna consider fun. I know that they'll stretch it, and we really can make an afternoon out of it. And so I was like, okay, fine, bet. All right, I got you guys. If we can get through this week and do all the stuff we got to do, because we kind of have a saying in our house, if we work hard, then we can play hard. So we got to show up and make sure we're doing our best at school. We got to make sure our chores are done. We got to make sure we're not fighting and dramatic this whole week. But if we're cool, if we handle our business, then sure, I'll hand you each $30 Saturday and we can go on a little shopping spree. And so, sure enough, that's what happened. Saturday comes, they were chill. We got through the week, we handled our business, everything was good. Not perfect, but we made it through, and it was good. It was fine. They had a good week last week. And so we went out and they got like little watches from like Walmart. Again, super cheap, like $7, little digital watches that just made their whole day. And then one of them wanted to go get ice cream with part of their money. The other one wanted to go to another store. And so by the time they dragged me around 3 or 4 different stores and changed their minds about what they wanted to spend their money on 1,000 different times, it really did make an afternoon, and it was actually pretty fun. But I remember that night going to bed really kind of egotistical and boastful and prideful, because I was like, yeah, because see, they just went to bed happy. They just went to bed thinking that I'm so awesome because I just took them on this shopping spree, and they're gonna remember this, and I'm such a great dad, and I just need to, keep this up so that way they always know how great of a dad I am, how awesome I am, and they never forget it. They never forget the fact that their dad always comes through. So that was the weekend. But after they went back to their mom's house, and I kind of just thought back to the weekend, like I don't regret taking them out on that shopping spree, because again, it was $30 per kid. It took up the afternoon. It was a lot of fun. So that's not really like we don't. Just to be clear, we don't do stuff like that every weekend. Like I'm not going out and taking them shopping sprees every weekend. That was just what they wanted to do for fun that weekend. Sometimes we go bowling, sometimes we go to the park, sometimes we just stay home and play games and maybe order pizza. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I can see some people already typing out a big long comment down below saying, Anthony, you shouldn't spoil your kids like that, because when they get older, they're gonna expect you to keep that up and blah blah blah. That's not it. It's more about like, hey, how can we make this day enjoyable together as a family? So I think you guys get what I'm coming from there. But as I was thinking back at it, I was like, what's interesting about that whole day is in the fact that I ended the day with that sense of pride, with that sense of boastfulness. And I was like, well, why did I end that? Like I was proud I was able to have some fun with my girls and provide, and we were able to do that. But why in particular did I feel that sense of a pride and big headedness after that day? And I think it was because I sometimes, for me, again, I'm just going to share what I struggle with. Maybe a lot of you are like, I don't relate to that. Maybe there's some of you out there who do. But for me, I realized that sometimes I get caught up in the lie that I need to always be big and grand and awesome in the eyes of my kids every single time we're together, every single time they're back at my house from their mom's house, especially on the weekends. I'm like, okay, so we gotta budget this, we gotta spend this money so we can go out and we can do this, and it's gonna be great, and we'll get this, and we'll go here, and this and that, and this and that. And I think it's great being able to make memories and go out and do things like that with my kids. I kind of already broke that down, but I was like, why do I sometimes feel the need? It always needs to be something big, something dope, something that costs money, something that's going to be this big, grand, extreme thing every single weekend. What is wrong? What is wrong with just saying, like, hey, So for this weekend, we're just gonna kind of maybe just chill at home, maybe go to a friend's house and watch a movie. Maybe this week we're just going to lay low. Maybe this week we're just going to kind of work on some stuff around the house. Maybe this week we're just going to I whatever. Why do I sometimes feel bad and guilty when I do tell them no, we're not going to go out and do this big thing, or I'm not going to spend money on that, or this or that, or this or that, and sometimes we're just going to lay low. I think for me, the trap I fall into, having my kids only 2 weeks out of the month, essentially, in a co-parenting situation, I feel the need sometimes to make that time with them super big and super extreme, to honestly to make up for the fact that they're not with me every single day of the month, every single week of the month. So I'm like, all right, I have 2 weeks out of the month with them, I got 2 weekends out of the month with them, so we're gonna go big, so we're gonna go hard, and I'm gonna spend this money, and they're gonna get this and they're gonna get that. I think that's just a lie that I bought into, thinking that I need to always live like that, or to spend that kind of time with them in that way, in order to, I don't know, maybe make up for lost time. Maybe it comes from a sense of guilt and the fact that I don't get to spend every single day with them. Maybe it comes from a sense of pride and this weird, dumb sense of competition, from the fact that, well, the other parent, their mom, is out doing this, and they come back and like, well, we did this with mom, and mom got us this, and mom got us that, and so you get this big head about you, and you're like, oh, okay, well, mom took you to do that, mom bought you that, well, this weekend I'm going to take you to do this, and I'm going to buy you that, which is just totally dumb and totally stupid, because I'm not in competition with my co-parenting partner. We're a team, we're working together to raise these kids, and I don't feel like overtly that I am in competition with her. Like, I don't consciously and maliciously sit and try to keep tallies and be like, I gotta beat her, I gotta do, like, it's not like that. But I think subconsciously, even when I don't even realize it, sometimes I just feel like, well, I want the girls to think I'm dope, I want them to think I'm awesome, I would like for them to go back to their mom's house saying, well, dad did this and dad did that, even though that's dumb and that's selfish, and that's not what co-parenting is all about. I think I'm just being honest and just kind of admitting something I'm working through. I think there's a sense of that there, and I think I need to be aware of that. And I've talked to the girls' mom about that, about the fact that it's like she'll call me out on it. She'll be like, Anthony, you don't need to go and spend money on this crap that the girls don't need. But I'll be like, yeah, I know, but they asked for it, and it was just this one time, and this, and she'll be like, no, like, they don't need that. Like, use that money to go do something else, or to get something that they actually need. Like, you don't have to say yes to every little thing they ask for. Like, you are their parent. It's cool that you want to love them and spoil them and show them a good time, but as the parent, it can't always be so grand, and it can't always be Christmas every weekend, and it can't always be a party, and it can't always be in you taking them to the store, dropping all this money on them. And that's something that I've just really been thinking through a lot lately, and something that I'm just working through, and not even saying that I've perfected it and figured it out. Like, by maybe you hearing that shopping spree story, you're like, yeah, Anthony, you obviously had not figured that out, because that was just last week. But I think that's something I just need to kind of live in a little bit better, finding a little bit more of a balance in the fact that I can make memories and spend some good quality time with my girls, and show the girls that I love them and that I care for them and support them, without having to think that has to always come with a big event or material things or spending money or XYZ. Because what they need for me long term is for me to be their parent, and there has to be a balance of yes and no, and expectations versus not always getting what you want, and saving and planning and budgeting, and sometimes just living in the ordinary, and just not even making it about material things, but making it about the fact that, like, hey, sometimes in life you just kind of go through your week, and it's not always gonna be extreme, and it's not always gonna end with something magical and amazing and this big reward on Saturday. Like, sometimes you just go through your week and it just leads into the next week, and it's just normal, and straightforward and maybe even a little bit boring, and that's okay. And that's just how life goes sometimes. That's just something I'm processing, something I'm obviously working through, something that maybe you all could help me keep in mind. Shoot me an email every now and again and remind me to chill at the single parents podcast at gmail.com. That would be legit. But can you relate to that temptation, that mindset? Let me know. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on all that.
Something to think about.
So I was recently listening to another podcast out there, and this wasn't like a parenting podcast. I think it's like technically more like a dating relationship advice call-in podcast. And basically, long story short, the host was talking to a single mom of 3 kids, but she was asking about some advice on this guy that she was in a situationship with, trying to decide, like, hey, does this guy actually like me? Is he kind of being a jerk about some things? What should I do? Because she has 3 kids and he's kind of coming in and out and all these different things. Whatever. That's the point of their show. But the host actually made a really, really good point that I kind of wanted to dive into on this show. Basically, in all the advice that he was giving this caller, he eventually said, hey, you, as a single parent, you need to remember not to let people come in and practice being a parent with you and with your kids in particular. Ooh, and I was like, oh, okay, okay, okay. Let me say that one more time because that was a good point. He said, don't let people come into your life and practice being a parent with your kids and with your relationship. And I was like, ooh, that's good. I'm definitely jotting that down. And we're talking about that on my podcast. Let's break it down. Let's break it down. So here's why I like that so much. So here's the point of that statement first. Let's talk about the point of the statement first and then kind of break it down. The point of the statement is in the fact that as single parents, we're going to sometimes date people who don't have kids of their own. And that's fine. And that's dope. And that's awesome. And we love welcoming good, legit, safe, loving, caring people into our lives and into our kids' lives, and introducing them to people, and our kids getting to develop healthy relationships with the people that we're dating. And we talked about that on the show lots of times. But sometimes what can happen is that those people who come in and be a part of our lives and our kids' lives, these people who don't have kids of their own, will often kind of like use the time with our kids to kind of ease into parenting, to kind of, as that host said, practice parenting a little bit with our kids and kind of do whatever. But then whenever they feel like, okay, I get it, and well, this is kind of inconvenient, or I'm kind of over this, they'll kind of bounce to go find somebody to have their own, quote unquote, their air quote, their own kids with, maybe their own biological kids with, or they'll stick with you and they'll hang out with you and they'll pursue a relationship with you. But then they'll start talking about the fact that, like, hey, like, I want to have a kid with you. I want this to be, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes for the audio listeners, I want the kid that we have between each other to be our kid. So I have my kid. And then eventually what will happen is that person will eventually just pour all of their energy, all of their attention into their biological kids, and then push our biological kids aside, or kind of dismiss them, put them on the back burner, and just be like, well, yeah, you got my stepkids or whatever, you're there, but Bobby or Jill, that's my kid, and so I get to raise these kids. And basically, our kids for a while become placeholders until this other person either decides to go off with somebody else and have their own biological kids, or they stick with us and then they have biological kids with us. So the whole point was, don't let people do that. Don't let people come in who are going to do that. Don't let people stay who you can kind of tell are heading in that direction, because obviously the big reason why we shouldn't be doing that is because that's just not great for our kids. For them to get into a relationship with somebody that we're dating and then get close with them and to develop a bond with them and a sense of trust with them and all these different things, and then either just to be put on the back burner later when another kid comes into the picture, or for the person just to leave and our kids left feeling like, oh, well, what happened? Like, is there something wrong with me? How come Mike doesn't come around anymore? How come Samantha doesn't call or talk to me or take me out for ice cream anymore? That impacts them. And now, just to be very clear, sometimes we can't control that outcome. Sometimes we get into relationships with people and we just don't see that coming whatsoever, or we don't expect that, or they just it just turns into that, and it's just outside of our, again, our control. It's just outside of what we thought was going to happen, and that just kind of ends up being how it is. And if that's the case, like, you don't need to beat yourself up about that or shame yourself about that. Like, sometimes that's just how it goes. But this is in particular to the single parents out there who can kind of see the red flags, right? Who can kind of see things going in that direction. For example, like the caller on this podcast, like this guy, he was coming in and out. He was saying one day, "Hey, I love your kids, I want to be there," and then the next day he was just non-existent. And then he was saying all these things about like his own future and doing all these things with his own kids and all these things, and not saying that this person has to come in and be our kids' mom or be our kids' dad, because that's just not what needs to be the case in every situation anyways, especially if the kid's other parent is still fully in the picture. And we talked about that on the show before too. But I think we could stand our ground a little bit more and stand up for ourselves and for our kids in these type of situations by saying to the other person, like, hey, like, you're not going to come in here and just kind of use my kids as a placeholder until you're ready to have kids of your own, or until you're ready to go off and do your own thing, or until we have a kid between us. Like, being with us as single parents, they're going to have to understand that that comes with a level of love and respect for our kids, and that love and that respect needs to be shown consistently if you still want to be a part of my life and be a part of my kids' life. My kids aren't practice for when you have your own biological kid. My kids aren't a testing ground to even see if you want kids in the future or not. Like, oh yeah, I'll date a single mom just to kind of see what it's like to have little ones around. And then if I decide later on, if I don't even want kids, I want to go do this or that, then I'll just bounce and no harm, no foul. Yes, harm, yes, foul. And I think we as single parents need to be at least aware of that, at least open to having these conversations with our partners and being honest about these realities with our partners, especially if we are seeing some of those red flags, especially if we are seeing things maybe head in that certain direction, and just really start communicating with them. And then if it really does seem like things are heading in that direction, or if it just becomes apparent that our biological kids are just like practice round for this person, being willing to stand firm to our boundaries, stand firm to our expectations, stand firm to our roles as parents in our kids' lives, the role that involves keeping them safe, and that not just physically but emotionally, to say, you know what, like, if my kids can't be a full-on priority in your life, if you can't see them with the love and value that they deserve, then that's okay. Because again, they're my kids. They're not your biological kids. Like, you don't have to come in here and love them with your full heart. Like, I can get how for some people that's just not their preference, and that's just not something they can do, and that's fine. And you can go and you can pursue other things, but we're not going to do this one foot in, one foot out, wishy-washy thing while you just kind of just figure it out. Like, my kids aren't here for you to figure your shit out. My kids are here to be loved and to be cared for and to be raised in a healthy and secure environment. So if you at least think you want to be a part of that for right now, then cool. Then we can do this thing and we can see what happens in the future. But if you really think deep down that this just might not be it, then that's fine. And we need to talk through that. And maybe we need to make some changes in this relationship to address this situation accordingly. And I think that's fine. And I think that's okay. And I'm not saying that's always going to be easy. And maybe those conversations can be painful, or maybe that realization of like, oh, yeah, this is heading in that direction might be a little bit hurtful. But I think it's something that we just need to be honest about as single parents, especially as we're introducing people to our kids. And it's something we need to be aware of and we need to communicate to our partners about. And even on an ongoing basis, because sometimes things change, sometimes perspectives change, sometimes desires change, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that just needs to be worked out before kids get hurt, before we get hurt, before things get messy, before things get out of hand. The things that we're able to control in these situations, I just think we need to be honest and proactive about controlling and making sure everything is legit.
Something to be encouraged by.
So, said at the beginning of the show that it's my birthday. And usually, when people say that, bring that up, it's to, it's a big celebration thing. It's awesome. It's dope. It's exciting. It's like a big deal. Like it's your special day, right? Your special day. It's your birthday. But for me, over the last few years, my birthday has just been pretty tough. I'm just gonna be super real, super honest. It has been rough, specifically from a mental and emotional aspect. Because for some reason, a few years ago, I developed this mindset that on my birthday, I'm going to basically use it as like a litmus test for where I am in life, right? Like I'm just going to give myself a self evaluation of where I'm at personally, relationally, financially, all these different things. And if I don't like basically where I'm at in life on my birthday, then it really just it hits me emotionally and mentally, and it leads to a lot of sometimes depression. Like specifically last year was the worst because the day itself was chill. Like I kind of hung out, went to a nice restaurant with friends, but then I came home and I sat on my couch and I kind of just did that self evaluation thing, that little like reality check thing of like, well, where am I at in life? Where am I at with my money, with my kids, and all these different things? And I guess like I just didn't like the answers I gave myself, and it essentially led me into having a full-on like panic attack or a sense of anxiety or emotional breakdown, whatever. Like I ended that day, it was rough. It was rough. And so being more self-aware of the fact that I do that heading into this year, I was just able to basically use this last past week to I guess get ready for that reality, to emotionally and mentally prepare for this day right now, for my birthday, and to basically make sure that I was in a as healthy of a spot as possible heading into this day. And so I guess now what I just like to do to end this show is just kind of share with you all as I maybe even process this in real time. Because again, it's my birthday now. This morning I woke up, took my dog for a walk, set up all this podcast stuff, and now I'm here. So I really haven't on this day yet had some time to really do that self-reflection, to check in on myself, to check in on my emotional and mental state. So I we're doing that together. We're gonna end this podcast doing this together. So this at the end of this episode might be a little messy as far as my words go. I might stumble upon my sentences here and there, but I want to be okay with that. I want this to be as real and authentic as possible, uh, because I think it's really good as singles parents to really um, make sure that we are in a good spot, or at least we know what spot we're in, and kind of do those self assessments we talk about on the show a lot. That as single parents, it's easy to get caught up in the million things that we have to do and got to be here and got to do this for our kids, but to really check in on ourselves is good. And I think one of the big reasons why on my birthday in particular, it always hit me as far as my emotional and mental state is because I had spent 364 other days going 100 miles an hour. So when I finally sat on my birthday and finally looked within myself and got into this internal perspective mode, I think it just kind of hit me. So I think it's good to continuously be aware and conscious of that. So gonna kind of see where I'm at. So this last part of the show, again, it's just kind of gonna be what it is. So Anthony, future Anthony, who is gonna eventually edit this podcast, just let this segment breathe. don't get crazy. We're not gonna edit and cut and jump and do whatever. So we're just gonna see what happens. So on my birthday, where am I at as a person, as a man, as a single parent, as everything? I honestly feel like I'm really in a pretty good spot. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing good. I feel like I'm doing good. I don't think like I'm perfect. I don't think I have all my crap all figured out. Obviously, I think I would be delusional if I sat in front of you all and said those words. But compared to last year, I think I really am in a much better spot because I really do think I used this whole year last year as a year to really be okay with who I am and what I like and what my goals and my ambitions are and what my role looks like as a single dad and what it looks like just as a person in general. Because I think ultimately I spent a lot of my time, even up until maybe even last year, really holding myself to a lot of these big expectations, holding myself to these big standards. And I think it's good to set goals for yourself and have ambitions and even standards for yourself. I think that's good. But I think I pushed it so hard that when I didn't always live up to those standards and expectations and goals that I had for myself, instead of realigning and readjusting and course correcting and just pressing on, I buried myself with a lot of shame about that. A lot of sense of comparison to other people, especially other people my age. As I got older, I would look at other people around me and my age and only see the surface level stuff that they put out and the whole grass is greener on the other side stuff, right? And be like, well, I'm in my 30s now and look at me and I still have to do this financially and I'm not living in this big house that I own and I don't have 2.5 cars and I don't have a wife and I don't have a white picket fence and I don't have a giant savings account and I'm not investing in stocks and bonds and I'm not, jacked with all these six-pack abs and all these muscles and I just going down the rabbit hole, down and down and down, and instead of like doing the healthy thing and not comparing myself to other people because a lot of that is just fake and phony and everybody's dealing with their own shit anyways. I just once again buried myself in shame and these false standards that I set for myself, and it became hard and it really hit me. But I think a lot of what I was able to work through this last year was to look at who I am and what I believe about different things and how I want to raise my kids and how I want to relate to other people and understand that. And then ultimately come to the conclusion that I'm okay being that person and I'm okay pursuing that person. I'm okay saying, okay, this is who Anthony is. This is how he functions. This is how he thinks. And that's okay. And that's not wrong. And that's not bad. And I don't need to shift over here and change myself to be loved and accepted. And I don't need to adjust and go over here in order to be successful. I can just show up and be me and let that be okay. Ultimately for myself. And if that means other people, that just might not be cool with other people. Maybe other people don't fully jive with who Anthony is when he shows up and be his authentic self. That's fine. That's up to them. That's up for them to decide. But as long as I'm cool with me, and as long as my kids continue to know that they are loved, that they are respected, that they are cherished, that their dad's going to work his ass off to provide for them, all these different things, as long as I continue to cultivate a safe and secure environment within my home, then all the other stuff, like whatever, like all the other stuff can kind of just fall in. All the other relationships can kind of just fall in, and it can be okay just to be you. And I think a big part of that reality came from, like, to be honest, like this show and doing this show and really pressing into the show, because getting behind a mic every week and getting on camera every week and talking about being a single parent and loving that, and it's hot and hot era single parent stuff and all that stuff, like, it's cool and I'm glad you all are supporting it and being encouraged by it. But that took a lot for me to do, because it really is countercultural to a lot of stuff that even I was raised with and raised to think, and like a lot of like even like religious stuff that I had to separate, to where it's like, no, 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 like you shouldn't press into that aspect of life. Your life needs to look like this, and tradition and values and God and this and blah 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 blah. And so for me to finally say like, no, I honestly, I like being a single parent. I love it. I think it's great. I think we're going to talk about this on future episodes of the podcast. Like, I think being single and doing you is kind of the new norm, at least where we're heading. And I think that should be normalized in a lot of ways. And I think the reality is, no matter what you think about the perspective of life, the reality is that there's millions of people out there who are like me, who are single parents, either by choice or just by circumstance. And that reality is not going to change just because you have a certain opinion on it. And so I'm going to show up and I'm going to be me, so that way, hopefully, even if it's one or two people out there, I can encourage and give hope and put a smile on people's face who are also out there, who maybe feel like they're less than because of their situation, or who maybe feel like they're not good enough because they're going against the norm and tradition. And it took a lot for me to get up there and just to decide that this is what I want to do and who I want to be. But I don't think I was able to fully get on camera or get behind a microphone and do that until I was secure in myself. And I think that's ultimately why, because I technically started this podcast like, what, 3 years ago, but I would do it for a little bit and then I would stop, and then I would do it and then I would stop. But I think part of that was, well, part of it was just life and doing a podcast every week. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, especially when it's just me. Don't have an editor yet. Don't have a producer yet. Don't have a social media manager yet. Don't have a, whatever yet. It's just me for right now. Uh, so it just takes a lot to do it. But I think part of the reason was just that I couldn't fully dive into what I know the show needed to be and what I wanted this show ultimately to be, until I was safe and secure enough in myself to consistently put this voice out there every single week. And so last summer ish, when I kind of came to that conclusion, worked through a lot of my own personal stuff, especially when it comes to like religion and stuff like that, that I'll probably get into on a future episode of the podcast once I kind of work through how to articulate that a little bit better. I was able to say, you know what, I can do this show on a weekly basis now. Still a hell of a lot of work practically, but I'll figure it out. I'll do it because I don't mind being a voice for what I feel like. This is who I am, but I know for a fact that a lot of people out there are as well. And so, yeah, I'm feeling good. I feel again, not perfect. There's still things I want to grow in, still things I want to improve in, still conversations that I need to have with people about where I'm at in life. And that's the point of life. You're always going to be moving forward and getting there. But compared to last year, I know I'm going to be ending the day in a lot healthier mental state, in a lot better place than I'm going to end last year, because I know that after that happened last year, after I kind of had that like mental breakdown, panic attack, whatever you want to call it last year, I just remember waking up the next day and just really telling myself, like, in 1 year, your birth, duh, but like in 1 year, your birthday's going to be here again, Anthony. And you need to start right now, right now, the day after your birthday, to start taking steps forward so that a year from now, 2024, when your birthday shows up again, you're not going to bed like this again. And then the same thing for the next year and the same thing for the next year. So really a lot of last year was me taking steps to get to today, to get to my birthday, so that way I could, in a healthy way, sit in front of you all and really sit with myself and be like, you know what, like, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I was able to do a lot of practical things in my life, like get like a legit 9 to 5 job. I got a new car, which took a lot of like mental stress off me. I talked about the stress of my old car lots of times on the older episodes of the podcast. Just relationally, I was able to make some changes in how I date and how I build friendships and how it's just a lot of healthy changes. And so all that to say, if you are in a place in life where you're just like, you know what, I feel like I am still figuring out myself. I figuring out who I am, who I want to be, and I'm going to bed or coming to my own birthday just not completely content or just not completely mentally healthy, then it's okay to go through the process of working through that, of doing those evaluations, of making those adjustments. And I'm not saying that that's easy to do. It's not going to be an overnight thing by any stretch of the imagination. But my hope for you all, regardless of where exactly you are in life currently, you're able to lay your head down on your pillow, know that as a single mom, as a single dad, as long as you're pressing forward, doing the best that you can, loving your kids and loving yourself well, then that's great. Everything else can fall into place, and everybody else can have their own opinions and their own thoughts, and they can say whatever they want. But as long as you're okay with you, with your parenting, and with where your kids are at, then that's amazing. You're dope. You're hot. And I appreciate you being a part of this podcast with me. Thank you so much for listening to me kind of spew all those words. I hope that wasn't too incoherent. But to be real, I'm super thankful that I have you all with me. I'm glad to be a part of this community with you. I'm glad to know that every single week I can engage with people who can relate, who can understand, who know what's up, and we just don't have to go through this thing alone. And I don't. I think that's great. And you all being here, that's seriously the best birthday present a guy could ask for. So thank you. Thank you. Well, I guess with that, that's going to get ready to do it for this episode of the Single Parents Podcast. Thank you so much for spending my birthday with me. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you listener out there, don't forget to just stay beautiful. Bye.